All right, you're good.
Hi, hi everyone. 1 second here.
While you wrestle your mic into Symmetry.
Yeah, literally, I just tapped it and like part of the bolt fell out. All right. Whew. All right. Hi everyone. We are gonna get started in just a second. I gotta post all the marketing stuff as usual. But as you're joining, welcome to the CG Cookie live stream today. And as always, I'm joined by Joe Chico.
Well, hello, everybody.
And today is gonna be kind of a fun one. Um, I can't tilt my camera as far down as I want to, but I am currently working on my Cintiq, which I haven't really done a live stream with the Cintiq before, but I figured for drawing faces and heads, I think it's actually more beneficial to be working on a Cintiq versus a normal tablet. It's more personal preference, but it's just something that I've noticed. Oh yeah, let me do this one, and then we are good to go. Yes,
Really quick
apologies
question.
for being just a tad late.
Dang, I got plus. I want to see how long that go. How long we can get that high. It's already at +8. There's post it. Benedict has a quick question about the CC fan group.
Yes.
Facebook is asking if it is possible / legal to use the Concept Cookie logo in a non-commercially for the cover art of the group.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, official start. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Von Rieden with cgcookie.com, and I'm joined by Joe Chico.
Hello.
He will be the moderator, and today we're going to be looking at drawing faces and tips on drawing the head. And there's certain rules or like general rule of thumb that you want to follow, but it's kind of one of those things where I want you to take your own liberties and kind of pushing your own style and your own likes into drawing faces and heads. But there's some things that I think are general foundations that you should kind of understand and then apply to your own style. Because even when I draw my own heads, there's things that I noticed about like certain ways I draw the eyes, and I always draw a heavier outline on the top, and I don't fully connect the line on the bottom usually, and I'll only like have like indication marks to imply where the line would be, and that's more of a personal preference thing. Now, I'm not saying you should do the the heads or draw exactly as I do, but today I'm going to give you some of the things that I learned in my fundamental drawing classes, especially with my life drawing sessions, and things that you can generally start to notice. And as always, if you have any questions, even if it doesn't pertain to what I'm drawing on, feel free to ask them on the side, and Joe will kind of act as the moderator and send them to me or answer them himself. And yeah, if you have any questions, I guess before I start, um, I just wanted to let you all know if you've been following CG Cookie or Concept Cookie lately, it's going to be a little light for the next month and a half, because I've been kind of going in a cave, and I will be there because I am recording a whole getting started series type deal, and it'll be more on the foundation and the fundamentals of opening up Photoshop for the first time. What do you do? And then going into, okay, well, what are the first steps? Learning about how brushes work, how the settings, and then learning more about the technical aspects, which I know can be boring, but it is a good thing to understand and know. And then from there, then I'm going to start recording more of the, I think we call them essential fundamentals. So that includes color, lighting, value, materials, texture, and detailing. And that's what's going to take me a while. So we probably won't have as many exercises over the next week and a half or a month and a half, just so I can focus on that. Okay, I've talked enough, and I think, Joe, are you ready to start the stream here?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to my desktop, and by desktop I mean my Cintiq. Okay, so I've been just doing a few test runs with it. It seems to be working well, but I have known to have problems with my Cintiq, so if at any point it glitches out or if it completely dies on me, I'll switch to the tablet. But as of right now, it's been working pretty well. I hope, knock on wood. I hope it can stay throughout. Okay, let's see here. Oh, okay, and let me hide some of these layers so we can make room for what we're going to be working on today. See, even right now, if I lift my pen for too long, it has this weird problem where then it can't register the actual pen. That's okay though, I have a mouse if I ever needed to do quick stuff like this. Okay, so I want to talk about that right away. I can hide some of these other ones. Yeah, I've been drawing my character Red a lot lately, so you're probably going to see a few of her today too. Move you to the side. Okay. Okay, so drawing the head and the tips I have for it. I'm going to make a new layer here. Wait, can you see my desktop or just the...
I just see the Photoshop doc.
Okay, 1 second. I'm going to switch this over so you can see everything.
Really quick, I'm going to give out some shout outs to the people that are saying hello. So, hello,
Okay,
hello
let me
Corinna.
set this up then.
Hello Kate. Hello Jake. Hello Katie. Hello Micah. Hello Dominic. Hello Lily. And I think that's all the
Hello.
hellos for now. And oh, hello Faith.
There we go.
We got a couple first timers in here too.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. I hope you learned something. All right, now you should be able to see the whole screen, right?
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Let me... Come on, pen, you can register. All right, so I'm going to first talk about the basic kind of known rules about drawing the head. Now, these aren't necessarily like you have to follow these strict guidelines every single time you draw a head, but there's something about them that it's good to keep in the back of your mind while you're doing your heads, so that if anything looks off or while you're working, you're like, something doesn't feel right, if you kind of go back to those essential guidelines, then you can kind of figure out, oh, okay, it was because the eye level was not about halfway down the head, it was way too high or was too low, things like that. So let me first, I generally start all my heads with a circle. I think this is a general rule for almost every drawing foundation, or they might slice off the edges where it's like flat on the side. So if like this was my side view. And then from here, there's two ways I can break down the head. Normally I go straight into, oh come on, don't stop on me now. There we go. So normally I go straight into figuring out the jawline, but usually the next thing you do, or you want to do, is figuring out where your eye line is. Now I usually don't put my eye line in the middle of the circle, because that would imply that the circle is the entire head. And when you think about it, the head is actually going to be a lot longer than this. What I'm going to do, oh, Cintiq, don't be a problem for me today. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I generally kind of figure out how long I want the head to be, and your eye line should be about halfway down. So when I'm looking at this, like on this angle, let me move my mic out of the way here. So the eye line should be about halfway from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin. Now, mind you, this is when a face is like facing directly straight ahead, and it shouldn't be one of those things where if the head is tilted or angled at all, you can't do it directly in the center because you have to imagine the line moves with it. Okay, maybe I'll just keep my Cintiq on the board my pen on the board the entire time. Okay, so I know my eyes are going to be generally somewhere in here. So now the next thing that I learned were about the three planes of the face. So it's from the top of the forehead. So looking at this, I can kind of generally see it's going to be about right here. The eyebrow line, the bottom of the nose, and then the chin. Now these individual segments should be about the same length. And I always think about this when I'm placing my nose and my mouth. So when I'm doing my nose, I usually do that second. So then I can see here, if this is going to be the bottom of the nose, then it's going to go somewhere like that. And if this is the eyebrow line, I'll be able to figure where that would be. So those three lines really indicate to me exactly where my proportions are going to be. Now, not every face is the same. You're going to have to adjust. Some people have longer noses, some people have shorter noses. And it kind of depends on the character you're creating, but also the look of the character that you want to create as well. So then on that eye line, you can kind of see how that initial halfway mark still applies here. And I'm going to try to work faster. I tend to work really meticulous while I'm doing sketching, especially when it's more of like this kind of stuff, but I'll try to work faster, and I'll show you how I would make mistakes and how I would fix them along the way. Because I don't want you guys to feel committed to anything when you're doing more of a sketch process. You want to be working a bit faster. Okay. And don't feel afraid to, actually, I'm going to leave them so I can show you, like, don't be afraid to leave helping marks or guidelines. I think, and I know I definitely dive into this way too much, of being too concerned with it looking perfect from start to finish. Let it be okay with leaving some guidelines throughout the entire process. It's okay. And if anything, you can just choose to erase them later. But sometimes those accidental, or maybe even intentional, lines can actually add to the piece rather than take it away, or take away from it. Sometimes they imply action, and sometimes those are really actually cool to see. So now the mouth is somewhere in between on that last segment. It's about halfway. And now the ears are generally in that middle segment. So from the bottom of the nose to the eyebrow is generally. Now depending if the head is tilted even a little bit either way, you have to kind of accommodate to that. But for the most part, I'll keep them just in that middle section. I think I might keep them more of like a shaved head. Right. So then from here, let's say you are either recognizing mistakes or you can definitely feel like things are off. Because I definitely feel like, okay, some things are off. What you could do is you could either flip the canvas, which is what I did just now, which should be a keyboard shortcut for you guys. I recommend having that set up because you'll be surprised by how much you use it if you can really see how much it really helps. And from here I can tell there are some things that are a little off. It's actually not terribly bad. Let me go ahead and erase some of these extra lines here. But for me, the nose and the mouth area are too long, and I want to shorten that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my liquify filter. Just push it up. Because this kind of goes into the whole idea of being a great digital artist implies that you are a great problem solver. So you don't just cover your problems up or you don't hide your mistakes, you try your best to fix them. Now, as much as I love the liquify filter, I think I sometimes use it as a crutch, and I don't want to enforce that on you guys. So while I still think it's great to use it for like minor push and edits here and there, I don't want you guys to just rely on quick sketching to be more off or more off-putting, and then just know, okay, well, I have my liquify filter to help me later on anyways. Like, I really want you guys to strive for having a better start on the piece before even having to use liquify. Okay, let me see here. Now before I go too far into this, let's go right into the side profile view as well. This over. Actually, I'm going to make this even a little bigger. So a lot of what I just did can be also worked for the side view as well. Okay, so once again, I'll start with that sphere. Now remember, that sphere does not represent the entire head. If anything, I see the sphere as like the top of the skull. Oh god, you're going to see a really quick skull drawing here. And then you can almost imagine that it's going to be like this. So there's like a little triangle indented point on the bottom of it. And you don't want it to stick, oops, you don't want it to stick too far out. You don't want it to be too big. You still want it to feel like the right size for what we're doing here. And actually for this character, I need to make it a little bigger if I want it to match up. So probably about here. All right, so then how would we go about doing this? So then once again, I'm looking at the head as a whole. Eye level is going to be about here. Forehead line is going to be generally around in that area. So then from here to the bottom point, I have to segment it into threes. Actually, I should make this more bold. So those are my three planes that I'm working off of here. So 1, 2, and 3. You can see how they're generally about equal sections. I'm not worrying too much about it though. I think sometimes that can actually slow you down, and for practice it's great to get it as close as possible. But in these kind of cases, I actually think going quicker and doing more of it is actually better than having it be more precise. Because then as you get quicker, you'll start to notice little things that are off and you'll be able to fix it, and you're much faster already. And when doing profiles, it's one of those things where you just keep practicing doing them. Because then after a while, you'll start to notice like where the curves of the nose and everything go. And not only that, but you'll kind of figure out how you like them to look, which I know sounds strange, but then that's what will eventually develop into your style. So rather than forcing your style to come across, because I think that's something that I've noticed with a few questions I've been getting recently, but I just keep reiterating, don't force your style, it'll come naturally. I'm sure we have a few questions, so maybe I'll stop talking for a little bit and answer a couple.
Yeah, we got quite a few questions. We'll start off with Benedict. He says, how important is knowledge of the skull for the head? Is skull knowledge needed? How does female and male face structure differ? And how can you talk a bit about the skull and how the main muscles in the face are aligned?
Whew, okay, that's quite a few.
That's like
Okay.
three questions. He cheated.
Let me tackle the first one. So, how important is knowledge of the skull? I think it is important. And I think it's important, like from the side view, a skull is not circular. It's actually pushed back, so it's more like this. And the more like little understanding you have of it, I think the better. The thing that helped me out the most with the skull is really seeing that the eyes itself are like in a socket. Because when you look at the skull, where those eye holes are, those are the different sockets where the eyes literally sit in. So then it kind of helped me envision eyeballs more as spheres. And then when I'm shading them, I really think of them as spheres that are kind of positioned in these sockets. So yeah, that helped me. And I'm trying to think if there was, I think it was the teeth, and really seeing how the teeth, they're bones. And I don't always think about that. Well, now I do, but for a while I didn't really think about, the teeth being actual exposed bones in a way. And I think that's why when I draw them, I always think about that and the way that I would shade them. So there aren't like highlights everywhere on teeth. You'll usually notice that on teeth, there's usually like maybe a few specular highlights on a couple teeth, and that's it. Let me see. What was the second question? How does female and male face structure differ? Okay, this is a good one, and I think probably a lot of you have this. So usually when I'm doing females, when I do the chin area or like the jawline, I keep it relatively more smooth. Here, I'll put I think the female is the cross one, right? And then for males, I usually go at an angle, and I really make the chin more pronounced. Now, this also depends on the age that I'm trying to create the character, and my characters tend to look more Final Fantasy-ish. Final Fantasy-ish. So they tend to have more of a, I want to say, feminine quality to them anyways. But if you want to really emphasize that this is a male character, then you can look at things that are considered masculine traits and try to associate that in your character. So this one, especially with the chin, is a good one. Oh great, now my pen's not registering again. Come on. And this kind of actually goes into why I don't use my Cintiq, because it has these little problems. And but for the longest time, it wouldn't even work at all for me. It would just glitch out the entire time. And that's why I think I'm a little more biased toward them. But as you can see, that doesn't mean that I can just use that as an excuse of like, oh, I'll never use them again, because there are times where not even times, I do think Cintiqs are better for line art and things that are more precise. And then for shading and coloring, I actually prefer a tablet because then my hand doesn't cover half the screen when I'm trying to color something and I really want to see it as a whole. Anyways, so those are the two things I definitely think of right away. The second is when I'm doing the eyes, I tend to make female eyes a little more softer, a little more round. And then when I'm doing male eyes, I tend to make them just slightly flatter. And then I have that upper lid not quite as prominent. And then I'll usually add more indication marks as like the baggage. But the thing that's most important, I would say, is the eyebrows themselves. I usually make eyebrows on my male characters thicker and then a bit longer too. And then for females, I tend to make them thinner and more of an arch, depending on the type of character that I'm trying to create. Because sometimes if you make it too arched, it can look like a Disney villain. So I gotta be a little careful on that. And definitely those little lines here. So it's strange, but usually things that are considered like extra, so like any kind of wrinkles around the eyes, I would throw those more on male characters to kind of differentiate the two. All right. And then what was the last question? Can you talk a bit about the skull and how the main muscles in the face are aligned? To be honest, I don't think this is as important. I think it's important to at least see what the head looks like without skin, which actually sounds really creepy and scary. But I think it's good to see the cheekbone muscles, and then knowing that that's why when you see those lines under, those are because of the cheekbones, how pronounced they are, and then the different muscles, how they like adhere around them. So I think little things like that are important, but I wouldn't say that's nearly as important as understanding the skull. Okay, I'm ready for the next one.
Faith Newman says, I've been working hard on my character for my graphic novel, but it's hard to keep the character consistent. How do you keep your characters consistent? Is it just a ton of practice?
To be honest, I definitely struggle with that. Where I try to draw my same character over and over again, but I would feel like my OCD and my nature of wanting to look perfect gets in the way. And honestly, it is preventing me from creating the same character look each time. And I've been doing my research on this because I'm like, how do I do this? And a few artists, almost all of them, just say through practice, one, and by literally quantity. So you need to be not pumping out like 3 or 4, you need to be pumping out like 50 to 100. And by that time, there's little things that'll stand out to you about the character that you'll just be able to whip through without even giving it much thought. So it's one of those things where, yeah, you really have to put in the practice and the time, because you can't just expect your drawings to look like the same character without giving it the amount of practice it needs to really give it that quality. But I'm right there with you. I definitely think that's one of the harder things to do, especially if you want to be a character artist, because I consider myself more of an illustrator. But I would say concept artists are better at this, or even animators to a sense, where they're able to pick it up faster. So my biggest advice is quantity, and try going faster. Even if it doesn't look right, move on to the next and keep doing it over and over and over again.
The Acid Demon says, Hi Tim, thanks a million for doing these live streams. I learn a lot here. The question is, I have a lot of troubles making my front view faces symmetrical, especially with the eyes. Any tips on that? Thanks and Swiss greetings, Jay.
Yeah. Well, greetings from Wisconsin. I think it's kind of funny where when I think of doing eyes, like let me look at the ones that I have done here. Oh, come on, Cintiq. 1 second. But okay, as I'm waiting for this thing to register again, the eyes, whenever I do like a front view of a character, I always notice that my eyes aren't exactly perfect. And I think that's because that's something I've noticed with my own facial features is I feel like the lid on my eye is slightly longer on one side, which I know this is going to sound really crazy, but I actually don't want it to look symmetrical from left to right because the small imperfections actually add a touch of personal realism that I actually like. So I actually try to avoid making them perfect. Like when you see someone that flips a canvas from one side to the next, you can tell, and it doesn't look as natural. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right, so like this one is a straightforward one. This one up here, straightforward one. But if we zoom in, can see how they're not the same and they're not perfect. And that's something that would used to really bother me because I would want them exactly perfect from one side to the next. I will say though, I try to at least adhere to some of the small nuances and keep them the same. Like having this lid right here not touch the eyelash lid. Like you see how some characters have, let me see if I can make a new layer really quick. Some people have hooded eyes where this top line be hooded over like this. But if I have one side where it's hooded over and one side where you can see the line, that's strange. And that's where it almost implies that maybe she has a black eye or she was injured on this side. So those things I do like to keep similar. And then eye color I think is a very important one. Whether or not they have a thick iris ring here. And then the angle. So let's say this was higher, like this. Oops. So depending on the angle of their eye as well, I'd try to keep that consistent. Where if I had one side where it was angled up like this, but then the other side is kind of a neutral angle, that looks off to me as well. So I would go less for making it look perfect and more on figuring out what are the little nuances you want to distinguish your character and making sure that those are the same on each side. Okay, next.
Be Beatrice Beatrice DT. How do you keep accurate proportions when you draw a tilted head? I always seem to draw one eye too big, a side of the mouth too straight, etc.
That is one of the hardest things to do as when you're doing characters. Let me move these aside here. The number one thing that I can say right away, use reference. And I think if you're especially working at an angle that is slightly off, so let me see if, so let's say you wanted your character to be like looking at an odd angle here, like this direction. That's going to be a challenge because then you're playing you're not even doing 3/4 at this point. You're doing like tilted down 3/4, and then you got to really either use reference or even look at a 3D model of what the character's head would do. I think the best example was when I was working in 3D when I was in school. I was able to see the different angles and how the eyes and the nose actually line up with each other because I think that's one of the more important things that people get stuck with. And I know I got stuck with it too. Okay, but I'm going to try my best here to do this kind of on the fly. So once again, so here are my 3 lines. Sorry if I'm working a little faster than I should be explaining it. So those are my 3 segments here that I've been talking about, and they comply with what I was doing over here. And then in this case, though, you got to imagine wrapping around the head. So it's almost like you're wrapping around not an egg, but something where it's a very like rounded, extended cylinder. Okay, here's a great example. So like I said down here, the ear is going to fall in the second segment. Same with this one. It's going to fall on the segment. So I'm going to push it there. So even though my eye is going to end up being somewhere like right here, my ear is going to look higher. So then that's why the whole rule of your ear aligns with the top of your eye. It doesn't visually make sense, but when you look at it as it's wrapping around the head as if it's in a 3D space, then it starts to make sense. So I guess for the time being, let me put these little example eyes there. So then this is the top of the forehead around here. What do I want to give this character hair? Sure. Okay. I'll make it red actually. And the other thing is, don't be afraid about making mistakes right away. Like, I know that this is a tougher angle to do, and without reference, it's going to be more of a challenge for me. And that's why I'm going to work fast without caring too much of if it's perfect, because I know I can always make corrections later on. Like, even right away, I can tell that the ear looks a tad too small to me, especially on the length of the head. So that's why I just pull out my eraser tool really quick and just edit it on the go. There's no need for you to feel like you have to commit to something once you lay it down. The eye line is going to be about here. Actually, it's going to be a little lower maybe, right there. I do like to work on the corners of the eyes, so the areas that are right here. First thing I lay down, and that kind of implies where the rest of the features are going to go proportionally. Red has a bit of a smaller nose. Maybe I'll make her pissed. I tend to make all my expressions more blank and emotionless. Maybe I should challenge myself here on the live stream and do one with a bit more emotion.
You want me to go ahead and throw you a different question while you're working on this one?
Yeah.
Well, first I'll do a statement, and that's Alan Brosi says, I'm so excited that you're finally doing this topic. Thank you so much. Also, greetings from Germany.
Greetings.
Lily asks, hi guys, do you think I'm holding myself back by just not caring about any kind of style?
I would say no. I do think it's good to experiment in different styles, and you'll find your own as you do more work and you continue to do stuff. But I guess that question is, I want you to care, but I don't want you to force it, I guess is the best way I can put it. All right, really quick. So this is my really rough sketch of my red. So then from here, I'm just going to go ahead, turn down the opacity, and let's do a cleaner pass on this. Come on, pen.
I was like, are you there? I'm going to go with the next question, and that's from Blake. It says, hi, I know studying from reference helps a ton, which I try to do. My question is, what sites do you recommend to study face/anatomy? Thanks. Greetings from Texas.
To study the face anatomy. You know what's funny is I almost recommend Pinterest for everything now. Where if you just go on there and just type in like face anatomy or head anatomy, like you'll find so many good references that you can then collect on your own and create your own board. I don't think Pinterest is used, or at least in my mind, I don't see it as just like a baking and craft site anymore. I definitely see it as a legit artist reference collection site, and that's what I would probably recommend most. But then also, I mean, there's a ton of good art books out there that are on these topics. So the one that I always recommend is the one by Giovanni, and it's Drawing Human Anatomy, and I think it's Giovanni Savardi,
Yep.
and he has this really great book that doesn't focus so much on like superhero anatomy, but it focuses more on like what is realistic anatomy, and I think that's why I really enjoy that book more than any other anatomy book that I've seen.
The there's two websites that someone linked on Tumblr. Uh, one of them is called humansofnewyork.com, and it's just people that they talk to on the street and they take pictures of them, and they've got so many good just like headshots and body shots of people that are just everyday New York people.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
My face is so close to the Cintiq right now. If someone walked in, this would look very strange.
You look like you're gonna go blind.
It looks like I'm about to kiss it or something.
Um, does Joe have a DA? Yes, I do. My DA is J Chico, so J and then Chico at deviantart.com. So yeah. Um, Alan asks, how far can I go in stylizing a face without getting too unrealistic or unbelievable proportioned?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you'll know. Like if you look at it and you're not satisfied with the overall look and quality or the appearance, I guess. But it's definitely something I question too, where it's like even doing faces with like really apparent emotion. I definitely think you have to pull in some animation techniques to really liven up the character and really make that emotion believable. And that's at the point where I think selling the emotion is much more important than selling accurate, 100% accurate, perfect proportions. So I would, if you're focused on stylizing a face, I think it depends on how much you want to simplify it and how much you're willing to let things be more smooth, where maybe they're more rigid. But it kind of depends on what you mean by stylized too, because I've seen a lot of styles that kind of play with different ways of working with the face.
Nicole says, hi Tim and Joe, just wondering, why knock on wood? Where did that saying come from?
Oh, you know what's funny is I even looked this up when I was in high school because I was like, why do people say that? I don't remember though anymore. But there's actually a site that I think explains all of those weird things that you hear people say, and you are like, where did that come from? So, in all honesty, I don't remember. Sorry.
I'm reading about it right now.
Okay.
uh, well, obviously it's from like it's what's it called? Superstition,
Yeah.
right? Uh, apparently it's seeking protection against envy and anger, the envy of evil spirits, and the anger of gods who take a dim view on mortals, bearing too much pride, who get especially annoyed when they are responsible for the run good luck you're not grateful for.
Hmm.
Interesting. Guess people use trees as oracles, something like that. Hmm.
All right.
Interesting. David Martinez asks, do you ever use shadow shapes to map out facial features to help create likenesses?
Yeah. I would say that's not my main like go-to technique, but yeah, I've definitely done that before. I actually really like doing that. And even if I wanted to kind of help see where the light was coming from, like this is a good example of, if I really wanted to showcase, like I wanted light coming from overhead, like I would usually make another layer, turn the opacity down. I know this is more for like lighting techniques, but what you're saying, yes, I definitely have done that before, and I actually really like using that technique.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the bottom of the question barrel here.
Okay.
It says it's by Enzo Matrix. It says maybe you've answered this before, but how do you capture likeness? I'm I'm studying under Villipoo videos and Michael Hampton. I can make my own characters easily, but when I try to draw a celebrity, for example, it looks off 50% of the time. Any advice?
Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna find a celebrity. Or actually, is there anyone that wants to recommend, or is that maybe I'll grab my own.
Natalie Dormer.
Okay, that I can do. The first thing I would do is one, get a good reference picture. I think if you do it straight from your head, it's probably gonna not look exactly how you want it to. I'm gonna grab a picture of Natalie here. Make it bigger so you can see it. All right, so I'm gonna hide my red really quick so I can do this. I'm not gonna focus on the hair. I'm just gonna focus on her face really. All right, so the way you would start this is there isn't one way where you could go straight into like figuring out the shapes of it. You can lay down the shadows. You can go straight into line art. But for this, and for kind of the way I've been doing the rest of the head studies, I'm going to start with my circle. Then I'm looking at her chin line. Actually, this is going to be kind of a fun one, I think. She has a very interesting facial structure where she has all these smile wrinkles near her mouth. And those are pretty fun to draw.
It's always funny that whatever it's like, who should we use as reference? And you just throw out Natalie Dormer because she's got such an interesting face.
Oh yeah. You don't know who this is. She is one of the stars on Game of Thrones. And I guess she was in the new Hunger Games. All right, so then here, actually, it's actually kind of nice to see a real world example of bottom of the chin. Top of the head is probably right here without that poof, maybe even a little lower. If you go straight down, you can see how the eye is generally on the midline. And then if we look at, come on, pen. Ugh. This is why I don't use my Cintiq during live streams. I'm actually looking to get a new Cintiq, and then hopefully that will be like my day-to-day one. But for now, I'll struggle with this. All right, so then if we divide the top of the forehead to the bottom of the chin, we can see those three segments. Then you can see how this is generally the eyebrow line. This is the bottom of the nose, bottom of the chin. And the nose encompasses that second line. And if you look at the ear, it's also in that line. So it's actually kind of nice to see when a real life photo kind of confirms these general rule of thumbs when you're doing the head and drawing your own head. And I would even test it out. Take a picture of yourself and try to make it as straight on as possible. And then you'll be able to see what I'm talking about here. If you ever hear this noise, That's me trying to get the pen to re-register.
I was like, what is that noise? Um, really fast. Um, I guess you can kind of segue into it. But Michael wants to know that, or they have problems drawing different types of noses for their characters. How do you make yours?
I will do that after the Natalie Dormer one.
All right.
But yes, I definitely think noses were one of those that I struggled with drawing for the longest time. And only recently do I actually now enjoy drawing noses. I would say like in the past year or 2 years. But yeah, I can definitely show you how I would go about doing it.
This is actually a really awesome question. By Y. Diskin, it says, is it possible to have one style when drawing traditionally, but another when digitally? And how do I merge those twos, or how do I merge those, or solve whatever blocks them?
I think you just described my whole life. Yes, I definitely think you can have different ones for either. And it might actually get frustrating at times because you feel like maybe one is stronger than the other. Promise you, it's good to have a sense of both, and then they will work together. Like there's things that I picked up from digital art that I have been able to carry over to my traditional stuff, and vice versa. All right, so this one I'm going to try to do a little different where I'm not lining it out so much like I did with the other ones, where I'm blocking it out more with values. Because I think it's good to experiment and kind of figure out what do you enjoy doing the most in terms of creating your character. And once you find a style that not only works, but you feel like you can work pretty fast in and still have a pretty high quality, then that's the one that you should really start really developing.
Next question is, how do you study or how do you study reference? Draw on top of the image or on the side? Is there a difference?
Side, I would almost recommend never drawing on top of the image because then that actually enables you not to really analyze the different proportions and how things line up together, and you're relying on that underlying picture. So have it on the side, and then if you need to, you can have like one under as like your cheat sheet to see how far off you are. But please, please try not to use it until like near the very end, or um, I think that's something that we were taught in school pretty early on, and I've always kind of stuck to it. And the ones that do draw over the picture definitely progressed a lot slower than the kids that didn't just draw over the picture. So if anything, you're just hurting yourself, especially if it's supposed to be like a practice study.
Here's a pretty funny question. Hi guys, I hope the stream is fun so far. I just got here. My question is, would you ever consider having Tsui on the stream? That would be awesome. Smiley face.
I was like, what is SWI? Yeah, Jonathan Hamilton was here 2 weeks ago. He is actually one of my friends that we will be at Spectrum, and you'll probably see us together because this is our first time actually meeting each other in person. So it'll be really exciting. But yeah, I'll definitely have him back on the live stream. And I know that right now he's a Final Fantasy geek like I am, and the new one comes out in like 2 weeks, which includes the demo of 15. So we're both kind of geeking out over that.
But I thought the new one is 15.
Technically, I mean, there's so many Final Fantasies that come out. The one that's coming out is called Final Fantasy Type 0.
What?
Just go with the flow, Joe. Go with the flow.
Sure. Okay. That's kind of like Resident Evil. Like, have you ever played Resident Evil?
Mm-hmm.
All of the new ones that are coming out are like Revelations 2. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Or like either offshoots or remakes.
yeah, I'm like, what happened to Revelations 1? Benedict asks, would you do a stream where you answer all the missed questions that piled up in past streams?
Yeah, kind of like what would that be called? Layover stream?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many questions that it's tough because I won't always be able to answer all of them. And like every live stream, there's always at least like 50 that go unanswered. So just know, like, if you really want something asked or answered, just keep asking it every live stream. And then Joe does go down to the bottom section of the questions too and sees what's on there too. We don't just get the top vote questions.
Honestly, I just look at people with the coolest names and I'm like, yeah, I like this guy's name.
Wonderful.
I'm just kidding.
But
Um,
actually, that might be changing because we might be switching over to Twitch in the next, I would say, month. So that might be more. It will, we're going to do some tests. If it doesn't work, we'll just come back here to Google Hangout. But if we do like it, then we'll stick there, and then questions will be more chronological, or not chronological. They'll be more like time focused. And then if I ask you guys a question of like, what color hair do you want this to be? Like then I can get it right there and then, rather than having to like search through questions and not have it be anywhere near the time that you ask them. There we go.
speaking of which, someone says we really need a chat channel like Twitch.
Really?
Yeah, I agree.
Good timing.
Um, lots of people talking about the origin of knocking on wood. Natalie always looks like she knows when the world is going to end.
Yeah, well, she's the one that's gonna end it.
Did you ever study caricature?
I did not, and I actually kind of wish I did. I think that would help me be faster and maybe see nuances a little quicker, but I did not.
Ben's Ryan says some art teachers recommend to use grids for beginners to draw heads. What do you think about that?
Maybe. I'm definitely one of the more practical teachers, so I would say just literally being thrown into it and then just through repetition and through practice is how you'll get it. Because I had to do the grid line when I was in school, and like, yeah, I understand the point of it, and I think if they would have just given me a reference sheet that had the lines on it and then showed the face and then be like, now create your own, I think that would have been a better assignment. Because then you have to put your own personal touch into it and you really have to analyze, okay, what is going on here? Why are the lines segmented the way they are? And figure it out that way. But just a different teaching method. I'm not going to say mine is better because I don't think any teaching method is better than another. It really depends on the student and how they learn. So I would say maybe try both and figure out what's best for you.
I was gonna say I hated doing the grid method in high school.
Right?
Like
I was
just give
not
me
a fan of the grid.
just let me scribble on the paper. It's weird. I really wish I had a teacher that taught me to observe and analyze things in high school.
I think
I
it's so
feel
important.
yeah, I feel like instead they were just teaching uh
They thought was they were supposed to.
yeah, the idea of just draw what you see in front of you. Like try to copy it.
Or not really like analyze it.
Yeah, I don't don't really understand the whole idea of reflections and stuff. It's just draw this picture that you see in front of you and use the grid to do that, you know?
Here's the grid.
Because you know how like people would just grid stuff out and then they would just draw each square, like what was in that square.
Uh, to be honest, I did that in high school once.
Yeah.
I drew an entire picture with grid lines on it.
Mm-hmm. But then you don't realize that you're what you're trying to capture.
No,
Or
if anything, you're making it like you're taking all the artistic vision out of it in a way.
you're essentially doing a puzzle.
Yeah, because then you're literally trying to be a photocopy machine, and I refuse to be that. All right, so when I'm looking at Natalie's face, there's some things that I notice. So when I look at her mouth, you can definitely tell that this side's a little higher because she has this little smirk to it. And then there's a lot, her lip gets really thin at the point over here. So I'm trying to recreate that. And then her nose is a very standard nose. So I'm not doing too much to it. And I guess to the person that asked how do I draw noses, I always work on the nostrils first, and then I loop around the skin around it, depending on how big I want them and how I want them to match the character. Now, I really try not to make them too much more detailed than that, unless if I'm going for like realism or I'm trying to push it. But if you're doing more of like animation or something where you're trying to make them really quick, I wouldn't do much more than that. Like maybe I'll add a line to indicate like shadow, or if it was a male character that had more of a pronounced nose, maybe I'll give it more lines to it. But for the most part, I try to keep it more simple. Okay, now
Dylan
it's
Ever
there you
has
go.
a question about smile wrinkles.
Yes.
Whenever I try to draw a smile wrinkle or a line under the eye, it
Oh,
comes
I
out looking
totally know where
more
this is gonna go.
it comes out more looking much like a much more pronounced than they would like it to, and sometimes make the character look really old. How can I fix this?
Right. I totally feel the same way. Like even on when I was doing this earlier, it was like one of those weird things, or even this guy here, those lines. So here's my advice on that. Because if you're doing something that is very simplified, like if you're doing these kind of sketch stuff, you're overlooking and you're leaving out a lot of the detail and the hyperrealism. So then some things get taken out, and sometimes that would even include wrinkles. But unless if they're smiling or if it's more pronounced, then you definitely want to make sure that they're hinted at. But the way that you add them has to be very careful because, oh, come on. There we go. You're right. If I made this, oops, like that right there, it just aged them like 10 years minimum. But if I do it more on the corner of the mouths and then imply that, yes, the wrinkle is going up, even if the reference has it going all the way up to the nose, since I'm doing more of like a sketch study of it, I'm not doing hyperrealism. I'm just going to imply that line. I'm not going to fully show it. So like even the bags underneath the eyes, rather than like making them really dark and like really pronounced, I'll hint at them like this. So it's a lot of like implying the wrinkles rather than like fully showing them. That's how I would do face wrinkles.
Have you seen Ben Hero 6?
Ben Hero? No, I've seen Big Hero 6,
I'm
and
pretty
I
sure
thought
it's
it
a
was
good
good.
one.
It was fun.
Yelena asks, "Why does everyone think my drawings are amazing, but I kind of find them bad? Do you ever feel like that?"
That just means you're very critical of yourself. That's a good thing. I remember telling Joe a long time ago, like I feel like every time I finish a piece, I always look at it and be like, I could have done better. And then I have that mentality going into my next one of I can do better. And to be completely honest, that'll probably never leave you. But on the good side, so even though that sounds really negative, on the good side, that means that you'll probably progress faster than other people because you are so self-critical. As long as your motivation stays high and you're not like killing your hope, like you can push yourself so much farther, faster because you are able to see like how much better you can be, and you're not limiting yourself. You're not settling on the skill level that you have currently. And especially if you're in high school, don't let this get to your head. I remember everyone telling me that I was, the best, whatever. And like in high school, yeah, it feels good to hear it, but you also that you're just a big fish in a small pond. Like, yeah, I might be the best at my, high school, but that's one out of 800 kids, and maybe 10 to 20 are actually like seriously interested in art. So I'm really only competing against 20 people. And then when you get to the real world and you're trying to get a job in the industry, you're no longer competing against 20 people. You're competing against like 5,000, if not even more than that. Probably more than that are actively like searching for a new job. So yes, I have had that feeling before, and I have gone through that whole process of really looking at myself and being like, no, I can do better. And yeah, it's one of those where you take the compliment, you don't downplay yourself. I actually find that more annoying when people are like, no, I'm horrible. Like, don't say that, and like they fish for compliments. Don't be that person either. Just accept it, absorb it, but don't let it taint your perception of yourself or your ego. Because then when your ego gets too big, that's when you stop progressing. And I think every artist goes through that stage at least one point in their career.
Marina says, "Hello, I hate uh
Can you speak?
I'm trying to read this. I think obviously there's a typo, but it says I hate arriving at home at 22 hours, but happy I can still be here with you."
Well, hello. Glad you can make it.
Jake Scott says, "I saw snow for the first time last week. Awesome. What elements would you incorporate into a character creature for a winter theme like lightning and etc.?"
What elements would I incorporate into a winter theme? I think besides snow, maybe wind. Um, I actually think snow is one of the hardest or like a snowy environment is one of the hardest things to draw because your color palette alone is pretty limited. Like unless if you really make it surreal fantasy, like your color palette's not gonna be very fun. So if you're gonna try to liven up with elements, I would probably work with ones that add more color to the scene. So like if you're thinking lightning, that actually might be a cool touch to add to it. Besides that, I would probably pick a different environment.
Denny says, "Oh no, please don't switch to Twitch. There's a bunch of young immature kids spamming there."
I thought that was always.
No, I
uh,
think the new thing now that 4chan's doing is they're going onto people's Twitch channels and they're just like upping these like little kids that are streaming that are maybe like 11 years old, and they just like flood their stream so they get like super hyped.
oh, I mean, I honestly don't think someone would want to watch this stream unless if they were actually like interested in digital painting or like learning. Um, we'll see though. Like I said, we'll experiment. If it really doesn't work, we'll just come back to Google Hangout.
EV says, "Hello, I'm having problems with the 3/4 view in general. Do you have any tips on that?"
Yeah, let me go ahead and switch. I'm not really liking the result of this Natalie Dormer picture. Where I think from here I would need to flip it. I need to adjust some things. Like you can tell the eye is way too high on the left side. Hold on. Maybe let me do one more adjustment here, and then I can switch over to the 3/4 view. Like this is a great example of when you flip something and you're like, oh my god, it's so far off.
What has science done?
Even this I'm not fully happy with. But really to capture the likeness, like you really have to study and analyze the reference that you're using. And this is a great case of I felt like I rushed it. Some of the parts in the beginning too. Hmm. All right. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna chalk this one up. I'm gonna go do a three-quarter view, and this is a great thing to showcase. Like, yeah, I don't always make things look perfect either, and I just have to move on from them. I can't let it. I can't just dwell in my pity of, sorrow of like, oh, I didn't make it look exactly how I wanted to.
The Yeah, I was gonna say usually what I do for trying to capture likenesses is I try to exaggerate and then tone down.
Hmm. Yeah.
So like, she obviously looks like a fox, so that it's like you really need to push that smirk of hers. The her eyes are a very important facial feature, and same with her nose. So it's like you try to push those to an extreme, and then you dial down everything else.
Hmm.
While you're working on this 3/4 picture, um, while you're giving out tips, I'll go through a different question.
Okay.
Um, Brendan Vang asks, what are your favorite types of games, like MMORPGs, first-person shooters, racing games?
Okay, my favorite type of games? No, actually, MMOs are probably my least favorite. I really like fantasy RPGs, but not in like the, what is that called? High fantasy. So Final Fantasies are usually a big favorite of mine. But I actually really like things that people probably wouldn't expect. I really like Twisted Metal, which is like the car combat game from the 90s. Um, I'm like really into that. SSX 3, which is the snowboarding one, I can enjoy that. Kingdom Hearts is my second favorite game of all time. Final Fantasy X is my favorite game of all time. I really like weird ones too, like Pikmin 3. I've been on that kick for like the past half year. I think, and this is going to be probably a big statement, but I think the Wii U is much better than X1 and PS4. And it's funny saying that because I used to be more of like a Sony fanboy and like Crash Bandicoot will always be my homeboy. But I would say in the past 2 years, Nintendo's been really impressing me with getting back to having fun gameplay over the focus on it being on graphics. So I think for me, when I'm playing a game nowadays, it's more about gameplay more than anything else. And it sucks because I really want there to be like good games with stories that are really deep and enchanting, but I just feel like now that I'm older, I I expect so much more, and I see through a lot of storylines that I consider more generalized or more stereotypical, and that bothers me. So then now I just look for games that I consider fun. Like I think that's why I was such on a League of Legends kick for so long, because it literally is just a fun game, especially when you're with your friends and you can just joke around and like that's a good video game. So yeah. And yes, racing. I will challenge anyone to Mario Kart if they want. I have my Wii U in my same room, and I love, love, love racing in Mario Kart. So I would definitely accept any challenge if you guys want. Joe, what are some of your favorites?
Oh man, my favorites, uh, probably action adventure games are always what I fall back onto. Like right now, I'm playing through Majora's Mask on the 3DS, and I love that game. It's so much fun. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I played MMOs for years. No more, no more.
I
Um,
tried. I really tried liking MMOs. I can't.
it's now that I look back at it, I'm like way too much time
Yeah.
playing video games. I could have been doing art.
That's why I say for everything nowadays.
I know, right?
I could have gone to my best friend's wedding, but I could be drawing.
Why don't you draw the wedding, right?
I'm wasting time. There's so many people, interesting faces.
That's my favorite nowadays is when you see somebody, just like when you're sitting down, you're like, I need to take a picture of you because your face is so amazing.
In all honesty, I've done that a few times, especially at airports, where I like try to be as covert as possible and like take out my camera phone.
You're just like, hold still. Gotcha.
I was totally caught once by a kid though. Like he was kind of a dorky looking kid, but he was so interesting looking that I tried to like get a quick picture, and he looked up at me as I was doing it, and my flash was still on. Oh God, that was like the most embarrassing moment of like, oh, sorry, I didn't know what to say.
I was taking a picture of my shoe.
It was like you totally know that I was totally taking a picture of you, and you have no idea why, and you probably think I'm a creeper or something really weird, but no, I just wanted to draw you, which I guess sounds equally as creepy.
People are asking about necks and shoulders and how to draw those in 3/4 view.
Okay. Oh, I guess I haven't really been talking about. Okay, so for 3/4 view, so, oops, come on line. There we go. So if this is my middle line, I'm going to do this on a new layer. This is my middle line. I'm still thinking about my 3 sections. Actually, it would be more wrapped around. And then if you can almost imagine, let me do this quickly. Okay, so if this was my head, and if you can imagine the neck being on like a base that goes like straight down, that's how I've always thought about necks. It's just like almost a mantle, or not even a mantle, like a platform for the head to kind of sit on. So usually I try to keep them in more of like just straight lines. And then I did a front view. I try not to make them too thick. I also try not to make them too little, unless you're specifically going for that kind of a style where it's more cartoony or something that's stylized. If you actually look at the thickness of necks, you might be surprised by how thick necks actually are, especially even on females. Oop, am I on mute?
It keeps muting and unmuting you.
Oh, that's weird. How much did I actually say then?
No, I heard all of it.
Oh, okay. Um, so yeah, and then you might look at necks differently when you're drawing them. And you're like, okay, they're thicker, but usually they're slightly in, and then they spread out when it gets to the shoulder part. And then I usually indicate some kind of collarbone line here, and that's how I do my necks. Okay, but now for a 3/4 view, so if I'm imagining those straight lines, now at a 3/4 view, I'm thinking of those lines just from a different perspective. And I'm still thinking of that, it being like the cylinder that the head sits on. But I'm making my lines not quite as rigid, so it indicates some realism of the human anatomy. And then from here, depending on where you want your shoulder, or if like they're hunched over, you might notice that the neck might be more in. But if they were more extended out, I would leave it like that. There we go. And yeah, if this was more of like a life drawing session, where I almost tend to always draw an indication of a shirt line, give a sense of the collar line, but in this case, I'll leave it more open. Okay, now I'm going to go back and finish the mouth here.
Ian Falcon asks, is it good or bad to use reference of anatomy picture that somebody else did?
I'm going to say no, mainly because I've done that before. And the other reason is I think if another artist really accurately captured and really like, if you looked at it and you're like, wow, that's really good hand, I don't see the problem in redrawing it. If you're using it more as like a pure study, where you're looking at it and you're seeing what they did, how thick their line thicknesses are, how they treated the fingers and the joints. And I'm using hands because I was looking up hands yesterday, and I found an artist that did really good hands, and I was like, I might use these as a study and redraw them. And I think that's why this question is kind of funny, because I'm specifically doing that. And I think, yes, you can, but it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. For me, it's really looking at how the artist treated hands and the thickness of different areas and like how they drew the joints and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's good or bad. I would say if,
Hmm.
especially if you're trying to emulate someone's style, just to understand how they do it, like why not?
Absolutely.
Oh man, really good question. Do you think it's important to look back at the old traditional painters?
Absolutely. Yes.
I remember for a long time, I was like, I hate traditional painting. Like, these guys are dead. Who cares? And like taking art history classes and falling asleep because it was at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
But then,
absolutely.
yeah. And then uh, now I look at them and I go, there's a reason why they're the masters
Right.
and why you need to study from them. So look at those guys and see what you can learn from them, especially when it comes to values. Oh man, they know what they're doing.
I always think of the way they had to handle color because they weren't given like an unlimited color palette. They literally had to like mix their own. And for some colors, like really think about how you would mix gold and create the perception of gold and the amount of colors that they had to use to give the perception of gold. And I'm always just super impressed because their level of understanding is so much higher than I would even go out on a limb and say so much higher than most artists today, if not all of them. That yes, I totally think studying from them is still not only viable but and practical, but almost necessary.
Nick Nack is asking how do you make the front view and the three-fourths view similar?
Kind of like what we talked about in earlier with the eyes being the same on either side. You really have to look at your character and figure out. Oh, come on, pen. Oh, there we go. What are the nuances of your character that you want to be repeated over and over again? So, like, uh, actually, I might go try to find it on CG Cookie really quick. We had an exercise, and it was one of the very first exercises, like way back in the day. Oh, I am over liquefying this. And it was one on doing character expressions. And the hard part was making the character look like the same character in every drawing. And I noticed that I would do little things like uh, the way that the hair parted at some parts. So let me actually, I'm going to hide this one really quick. I think word art is like my comfort zone. That's why I always go to it. But like for one of my characters, their hair parts always in like right there, that bullseye right there. And the way that I create the flow of the hair, so I know it's always going to end there, and there's going to be a swoop here, whatever. But then as I do a three-quarter view, let's say it's looking this way, that point is still going to start there, but rather than it being like here, it's going to be turned in a three-quarter. So I'm thinking of the same brushstrokes and the same look, but now I'm just angling it so that maybe we can see more of the back of the head. But keeping those indication points like that, but not only just having one, but I'm talking about maybe having like four. That's how you can get a face that is similar without even worrying about the proportions and anatomy of the face. Because then once you get into the anatomy in the face, you should have a few things that are specific to that character that you try to repeat. But having other little things like where the hairline starts are things that I do to help myself. Or even, let me see if I can get my brush working again. But one of my characters can always indicate her because on one of her eyebrows she has two rings on it. And that's something that's really easy for me to remember. or like on her ear, she has a gauge. And those are just little indication marks like that kind of decipher who the character is. With the person barely even has to look at it and they can know and recognize who that character is within like a second. So try to kind of figure out what your character's little nuances are and then really make them known without it being like overemphasized or like shoved down the viewer's throat. You want it to be more subtle, but the subtleties are what will sell the character. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left, so what are the questions we can go through pretty quick?
Whew. Okay. Is there inherent issues with overlaying color in an overlay mode on top of values, assuming the values are working properly?
Is there inherent issues with overlaying color in an overlay mode on top of values? Yes. I would say in this is from personal experience. You can overlay something where then the colors actually become too bold and vivid in areas where it actually almost burns some of the colors depending on what how strong the intensity of that overlay is. But I would say usually no. Usually it becomes a problem when you're creating like multiple overlay layers and you can start to see not only the saturation and brightness going up, but the vivacious nature, if that's even a word. The color itself just becomes too strong and that's when it burns the image. That's what's called color burning. And it almost takes away from what you're trying to create, especially if you had values that were accurate underneath. Then when you burn your image, then that becomes the focus of the image rather than your values, unfortunately. So just know that you're probably safe. Just be careful if you use more than one overlay layer and where you're placing it.
Do you like Sakimi-chan's artwork?
Yes. I only hesitate because I've been following Sakimi for like years. Like when I first started on DeviantArt, like years ago. And she would put so much time and effort into her pieces, and I really saw like an experimental nature to her stuff, for some of them at least. And I could see her personal touches, where I think now that she's doing her Patreon, I feel like she has to. She has to pump them out like really fast. And I almost want to see more from her going back to those pieces where she really puts the time and effort into them. So yes, I like Sakimi's art, but maybe every now and then just give us one that's more of a personal piece and one that really showcases her true love of doing art rather than doing what she's doing now, where it just seems like she's jumping from different either TV shows or anime or games, and she's doing a few characters of them for the Patreon, and then just continuing down that route. I also give her a lot of respect for doing. That's a lot of work that she's doing on a weekly basis, and she's like a machine right now. She's going so fast.
To the both of you, what music are you listening to?
You go first.
Right now I'm listening to the Bleachers.
I know them.
They got that like
Uh,
80s vibe that I'm digging.
what was I listening to last night? I've been on a Pandora kick, so I've been letting them pick my music for me. A lot of indie music, but I'm sure most of you already know if you follow me. Lana Del Rey is probably my go-to.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's right now Bleachers, Death Cab for Cutie, because their new single came out, and Knife Party, which is like complete left field. When is the next contest coming out for Concept Cookie?
Let's see, we just ended the winter one, so there will be a spring one. It won't be March or it might be April, but most likely it'll be May, just because we're busy, like I said at the beginning of the stream, working on those new tutorials, and those have been kind of sucking up a lot of my time. So probably May, if I would give you an honest answer here.
People are asking about the anatomy of the neck, and I'm wondering if we should do that for a stream in the future.
Yeah, I almost think we should do more of like specific anatomy areas where then that would be like part of the head one.
Yeah,
Where I
so
guess like okay, but I don't want you guys to stress too much on, especially with neck anatomy, where like literally when I'm doing necks, like this is it. Where you really don't need to be focused so much unless you're doing hyperrealism, which I get again is a whole nother beast on its own. But if you're trying to do more like sketchy stuff and you're doing more practice, if you're looking at a reference image, then you'll start to see like, oh, like there's little indication marks of the muscles that are underneath, or like usually the Adam's apple is more pronounced on a guy. Girls tend not to have. It's very smooth, but on a guy you can like give a little indication mark. But I don't want you guys becoming so enveloped in worrying about is the anatomy 100% accurate, because then I think that's where you get caught up, and you should be more focused on the overall aesthetic of it and how it looks. Where sometimes I know me and my boss get in an argument about this, about what is important. Is it important to know all the anatomy names? And I personally would say no. I would focus on does it look accurate, and do you at least understand the different forms and shapes that are going on underneath of the skin? I think that's what's more important. Come on, pen. Oh, there we go. Any other questions?
yeah, I'm looking through them right now. I'm scoping
Okay.
them. Scoping them. Uh, where did you guys go to school? Do you suggest a certain school to go to? I was really wanting to go to the Art Institute in Portland for a BFA in graphic design. Any thoughts on that?
I went to the Art Institute in Illinois, Schaumburg specifically, and I this is a question I get. I feel like we get every week. And I would say I do not think art school is necessary, but if you feel like you want to get that college experience and or you might just be one of those learners who works better when they're told kind of what to do for every week and have different assignments laid out before them, like then I think art school might be the right fit for you. And while I don't actually like my major was game art and design, so my background's actually in 3D, so I didn't go to school for digital painting. And I don't feel like I actually learned much from my school in terms of Photoshop and understanding like character development and stuff like that. But I will say I appreciate the people that I met, and that experience alone I would not take back. So yes, I would say college might be worth it, but it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. And you have to kind of figure out yourself of what you want to do. Your turn.
Oh, I went to school at Milwaukee University, which is in Illinois. It's in southern Illinois-ish. Um, and I studied illustration and graphic design. It depends on what you want to go into, I guess. If you're going for graphic design, then you most likely will not be doing stuff like this. Graphic design, you'll probably be doing like pamphlet layouts, brochures, logo design stuff. So if you're looking to do illustration, going to an illustration school or an animation school, stuff like that usually helps.
Or teach yourself online.
Or
There's so
teach
many
yourself online.
resources online where like even talking with my boss the other day, it's like students don't even need to go to school anymore, where you can literally build up your portfolio just from the amount of education that's online, because in the end that's what the employers are going to be looking at. Like if you don't have a college degree but like your work and portfolio is kick ass, then you have nothing to worry about. Like you're going to get a job, because that's what's important for our career specifically is the quality of your work and then you as a person and if you're good to work with.
Someone's asking really fast. They'd like to know how to hotkey to flip the canvas horizontally.
Oh, this is a great question. Actually, I'm doing that in my tutorial later today. Okay, so keyboard shortcuts. It's a little different on a Mac and a PC, but pretty much if you can find where the keyboard shortcuts is for Mac, it's under Edit. I think under PC, Joe, you might be my go-to on this. It's under either Photoshop or File.
Yeah, it's under Edit.
It is under Edit? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, so if you go to keyboard shortcuts, then we are going to go to the menus. Okay, so there's two of them. So the first one, you can look specifically for the different menus or tools. I usually just go to the menus on the top, and then it pretty much represents the top menu bar here. So like File, Edit, Image, Layer, File, Edit, Image, Layer. So the flipping your image is going to be under Image because you're trying to flip the entire image, not just a single layer. Edit usually corresponds to a single layer. That's how you can kind of differentiate the two. So under Image, so image rotation, or no, flip canvas horizontal. So right now, why does it not have the... Oh no, I'm sorry, it is under keyboard shortcuts. I'm thinking of the old one. Okay, so then yeah, we have to go to the application menus. Same thing, image. Scroll all the way down until you find it. So flip canvas horizontal. So I have mine set at Command Q, just because I like to keep my left hand more on the left side of the keyboard without having to really move it. So like even my brush and eraser is set as Z and X. So everything is literally done without even really moving my hand or wrist whatsoever. So that's where you do your keyboard shortcut. Set it up. I promise you it will help you, and you'll be able to, it'll be one of those things that you end up maybe surprising yourself by how often you use it. Okay, I'm going to do one more looking through the question, see if there's any good, maybe a fun one that we can. Someone's asking, how many years did it take you before you could draw a good head? I would still say I'm still learning. Someone wants me to bring Cynics into the stream. I would love that. He's pretty funny. Okay, someone's asking, I've always told to practice, but recently I've learned there are multiple ways to practice. Suggestions? Try different techniques. If you feel like you're just recycling the same process over and over again, like the way that I was trying to draw Natalie Dormer, try that technique. Try blocking out your values rather than going straight into line art. Because I feel like my go-to is starting in color right away. But I need to experiment in the other regions of how to begin, because then I can pull from that what I learned and things that I think worked well, and then I can use that while I'm doing my main way of doing it. Someone saying, did I know that Neji got killed in Naruto? I do, and that was my favorite character. But I've literally only seen like 13 episodes, I think. Okay, I think we're good. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming to this live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and that's Central Time. And next week we will usually post what we're doing about a half hour to an hour beforehand, and it'll probably be something more fundamental based, like we did today on drawing the head. I hope you took away some tips and techniques that you'll be able to use on your own. And I'm trying to think if there's any other announcements. Oh, so I guess like this is a good example. Like last night, I was literally sketching before I went to bed on just different head structures and facial structures where you can see like my first drawing kind of sucks, where it's like very stiff and rigid. But then by the end of it, I'm trying to find a good one. Like that one was all right, but like I became more comfortable as it goes along. So let your first one just be kind of what your whatever one, where I'm just like I just need to get into that motion of drawing again. And don't be afraid if it isn't like up to your standard of what quality you feel you need to hit. Okay, and the other thing is just know that yeah, we're working on a complete new tutorial series, and hopefully that'll be out in the next couple months. Hopefully sooner than that, but we just got to make sure we got to do a lot of double checking, and yeah, I'm really excited about that. Joe, is there anything else? I'm trying to think if there's anything on concept
Yeah, I
cookie.
can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I think we're good. All right, so then thanks again for coming, guys, and we'll see you next week.
All right,
Bye
see you
bye.
guys. Bye.